San Francisco, it's Rex Broadcasting Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get it on.
How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going 2 hours tonight talking pro wrestling. We got in the first hour, we're going to have Brian Alvarez here. Of course, actually, he'll be here for the whole show. Second hour, we're going to try to get both Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan up from Pro Wrestling Noah. They actually just wrestled yesterday on the biggest show in the history of Pro Wrestling Noah. We can talk about the Japanese wrestling scene, the American wrestling scene in the second hour as well, the independent scene. There's Donovan Morgan with Ring of Honor as well. Mike Modest was in Ring of Honor. I'm sure we'll bring that up as well. Got, of course, Brian, how's your week been?
It's been pretty good. Hectic, but fun. So.
Yeah. Did you wrestle over the weekend?
Yeah, I had a show Friday night and Saturday night, so between that and the newsletter and everything else, it's been a very long weekend. But
yeah, and UFC and SmackDown and The Rock's Raw. Quite the Raw on Monday.
I love that Raw.
Yeah, it was really a fun show.
Yeah.
Did you listen to the Linda McMahon, what's it called, investment conference?
No, I haven't listened to it yet, but I read most of the transcripts, so.
Okay. It was that was quite interesting, too.
It was not as interesting as I wanted it to be, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was not a lot of news that came out of it, other than they're going to run a show in Vienna, Austria, and Milan, Italy. And the international business is doing great, and they closed the restaurant.
Yep.
And that restaurant lost a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. Well, we all knew it would lose a lot of money going in, but...
Lost more than I thought.
Yeah.
And it was about to lose even more. They were projecting $9.5 million more in losses this year if they didn't shut it.
And didn't they say something like some of the losses would be recorded in next quarters?
I don't know. But, I mean, they have... it's $3 million a year on that lease until 2017.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's saying a lot in WWE, but the fact that they got a lease through 2017 on a restaurant is just incredible to me.
Well, maybe they had to. Maybe they had to get a 20-year lease when they got the property. I mean, I don't know what the...
yeah. Well,
it sounds really stupid to me, too, because, let's face it, in wrestling, we don't know where this thing's going in 6 months. And to think that it's going to be hot enough to support a restaurant for 20 straight years is ridiculous.
Yeah. But to me, that would still be a deal breaker. The second they said, you got to sign for 20 years in Times Square.
Yeah.
Especially when you have things like Vince signed Brett to a 20-year deal, and how long did that last?
Well, it lasted not as long as the restaurant.
No.
But anyway, we're going to go ahead to a break right now. We've got one line open at 1-800-878-PLAY, so you can jump on board. We're going to start taking your phone calls after the break. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network.
I want you to listen to Dave and Brian here on the Sports Byline Radio Network, the Wrestling Observer. If you smile like the Brian, you'll do it.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. We haven't been live for 2 weeks, but we're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 to 7 Pacific Time. And got a lot's happened in the last 2 weeks. WWE financials came out on Tuesday, which kind of ruined our life. They lost $26.7 million last quarter, which was the worst quarter in the history of that company. But actually, they did not lose money on the wrestling end. It was all pretty much losses from the restaurant.
Yeah.
Even though some of the wrestling numbers... here's the thing. The house show numbers are atrocious. The TV ratings are okay. They're not really as bad as people make them out to be. They're okay. The pay-per-view numbers are okay. And now they're messing with pay-per-view.
And now they're what?
Messing with pay-per-view.
Oh, yes.
Switching the pay-per-view to Raw and SmackDown separate pay-per-views in June. I think that is a big risk and not a wise move. If they really did the brand extension, first of all, the right way, if they did the right way, it wouldn't be called a brand extension. That's problem number one right there. But if they had done the split the right way, the idea of doing separate pay-per-views every other month would not be a bad idea. But they've done it all wrong, and now to go in there with split pay-per-views after blowing that Rock angle on Tuesday, it's like The Rock is no longer on SmackDown, and Stephanie McMahon doesn't even care, and it's like if she doesn't care, then we don't care, and if we don't care that the biggest star, or arguably one of the two biggest stars in the company, has just switched, and it's not a big deal, then how is anyone to take any of this seriously?
Yeah. And, it's not like if they start going to split pay-per-views, they're all of a sudden going to start doing it right. You know what I mean?
Well, they just did it wrong again this week. They don't know what right is.
Well, of course not. That's why it's going to fail.
Yeah.
And the thing I got out of the report was that as far as like the business end of the WWF goes, or WWE, they run a very, very tight ship. They can afford to do stupid things like the XFL and the restaurant. They'd be so much better off if they didn't do those stupid things. But I think this pay-per-view thing is going to ultimately fail. But I think that they run a tight enough ship that it's not going to kill the company.
Well, nothing's going to.
It would be so much better to not bother doing it.
Yeah. Well, nothing's going to kill the company unless they get canceled by the networks.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got enough cash on hand that that's the only thing that will kill it, and that's not likely to happen for a while. I mean, TNN, they're in better shape with TNN now than they've been in a long time, just because of the way TNN has refocused its network. No Way Out, what were your thoughts?
It was one of those shows where when it was over, I didn't feel ripped off, but then when I went back and did a review on all the matches, I realized that it really wasn't that good a show. And, Rock and Hogan, I mean, last year, the thing about Rock Hogan last year was, if you watched the match with the sound off, it was just such a hideous match. But with the volume on, it was something special. And this year, it was not. With the sound on or off, it was a bad match.
It was horrible.
Oh, yeah, it was real bad. And, the best match on the show was, maybe Jericho and Jeff Hardy for the opener, or the tag, the 2-on-3 match, and those weren't even blow-away matches. So, I mean, overall, it was, just a show.
I liked the 2-on-3, and I was really liking the show, the first half of the show. And then, and Hunter and Steiner, I mean, the stupidity of it kind of got to me, but it was exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
So that was not really a problem. The Hogan Rock match really turned me off, though, on the whole show, because it was just so bad. It was much worse than I was expecting, and even though I knew the finish, actually seeing the finish just made the match even worse.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe seeing Vince McMahon looked, I mean, it made me think he's like, I mean, I don't know. It's like a guy with that much money doesn't need to be looking like that. And I fear for the business if he's not around much longer, because it's not exactly falling into good hands, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But then also sometimes I think that even if Vince lives to be 150 years old, how much longer does he have of having what he used to have? You know what I mean?
Well, he doesn't have it anymore.
Well, there you go.
Although,
he does have his moments still.
Yeah. As a performer, he was quite good on Thursday, and I think that because they know what they're doing for WrestleMania, and they've actually this is just like SummerSlam.
Yeah.
SummerSlam, they figured out what they were going to do at SummerSlam a couple of months ahead, and then built towards it. And the last month before SummerSlam, and SummerSlam itself were really good. And then this year, they pretty much a couple of weeks ago had figured out what they're going at WrestleMania. So No Way Out was just directed towards WrestleMania, and the TV. Plus, you got Austin Rock on TV Monday night, so how are you going to go wrong? I'm sure Monday's TV is going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that because of that, that's going to be really good, too, but I'm really worried about this summer.
Well, they need to, this will never happen, but ideally, they should start working on SummerSlam like today. So at least they can start something, you know what I mean? So
they got the man, they got plans for WrestleMania already. I mean, for...
Yeah, but I mean, that's maybe a plan for one match, and God...
And God's plan is never going to happen. Never going to happen.
Exactly, that doesn't count.
I know.
But, I mean, they should have, at least an idea for SummerSlam so they can at least start something, as opposed to just the big drop-off after WrestleMania.
I'm sure there's going to be a big drop-off. Austin's going to have to carry the whole thing because, Hogan can't be around. Even if Hogan's around, he will lead the drop-off if they don't get rid of him after WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Friday night. What did you think when you saw the Tim Sylvia Heavyweight Championship win?
When Rico won the belt, I wrote this big thing about how, he did win, and you got to respect him for that. But there was still a part of me that wanted to see him get beaten up real bad, and not hurt or anything, but humbled. And he got humbled by Tim Sylvia, and me and my brother-in-law sat there and laughed, and it was a good time.
Which
was good because my brother-in-law was in the hospital with a punctured lung. This is the highlight of his weekend, was watching Rico get destroyed.
What's funny is because I was watching that, and I knew that Tim Sylvia was better than the Internet was giving him credit for being.
And better than the Cabbage fight.
Well, he trained really hard since the Cabbage fight. When he walked out, I mean, he had trained really hard. I mean, he had big upper body and everything. And but I really did expect that Rico was going to take him down and elbow his face in. I really did.
Yeah.
And when he went for the takedown and couldn't get it, I go, he's going to have a hard fight here, so he's going to have to stand here and wait for the guy to get tired because he's such a big guy, and he's going to take him down and elbow his face in.
Yeah.
And then he went for this takedown. Upper body takedown, and the guy just shrugged him off like he was nothing. And I'm going this guy's not going to get. This guy's going to be hard to take down. He's like an oak tree. And then he ended up on top of Rico. So Rico went for the arm bar, and it's like, oh my God, on the ground, this guy's in trouble because Rico's really good at submissions, a lot better than people know. And he powered out of that arm bar and dropped him on his head like a power bomb. And then Rico got this look on his face, going like, uh-oh, I'm in a lot of trouble. And then he was dead after that.
Yeah.
And he was knocked out about a minute later.
Yeah.
You didn't see the BJ Penn Uno match.
No, I just saw that and the tank fight.
Yeah, well, the tank fight was the tank fight. Frank Mir looked very good. And
the thing about Tank was I was reading this interview and he was talking about his dieting strategy.
It doesn't work.
Eat no food. And he came out for that fight at 248 or whatever he was. And it looked like every pound that he had lost was a pound of muscle, and he had retained every ounce of fat. Because he was as blubbery and flabby as ever. You know why? Because he does all that drinking. Yeah. And it was, oh boy. Yeah. Well, it didn't matter what his weight was because it didn't last long enough for that to be a factor. He was done in 45 seconds. BJ Penn and Carl Uno was a 5-round draw. I thought BJ Penn won the fight, but... Which I wanted to ask you about, by the way. Yes. About the draw? Yeah. How did that feel? In what sense? Well, remember you did the judging that one day? Yeah, well, they changed to give it a draw and they wouldn't let you? Well, they changed the judging rules. Oh, lame. I mean, now it's round by round. One of the things, if you judge the fight as a whole... Hold on, round by round? Yeah, you've got to judge round by round. When I did it was... 5 rounds, so shouldn't that... Yeah, well, one of the judges picked the 5th round even and had 2 rounds each. Let you do that. And you are allowed to pick even rounds. I see. Yeah, you're allowed to pick... It can be a draw. I had it even going into the 5th round, and I had the first 3 minutes of the 5th round even, and really, BJ Penn to me won in the last 2 minutes of the fight. But when you're saying that, I mean, that can easily be a draw. I mean, when you've gone 23 minutes even, if you judge the whole fight as a whole, I counted up. BJ had 7 takedowns and Uno had 3. BJ had better striking, although Uno had better leg kicks. Uno was more aggressive. As a whole on the fight, I think maybe Penn would have won, but when you're judging round by round, that's just how it turns out. When I was judging, you just judge the whole fight. There was no, and you can't pick draw, even though the fight I saw was a draw. Let's see. Randy Orton and Dave Bautista. This evolution is turning out to be, I won't say a bad idea, it's turning to be a very unlucky idea. Everyone in that group is having problems. That is the evolution of pro wrestling. Everyone's crippled. Yeah, did you see that those statements by Edge right before he got the surgery? Oh, well, actually, he hasn't had the surgery. He's having the surgery on the 10th. But yeah. But I mean, I read that and it was like, oh my God, he not only does he know it, but I mean, he knows it too well, and that is that we are, we're in the midst of creating a generation of guys who are going to be crippled when they're 40 years old. Yeah. And it's really, for all the great wrestling that we're seeing. Because of a lot of other reasons and the standards and everything like that. That's what's happening. We're going to go take a break, and we'll come back with all your phone calls right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. And if you're interested in information on either of those publications, you can go to www.wrestlingobserver.com. We have news updates throughout the day, as well as information on how to subscribe to both the Observer and Figure 4. And this week's Observer had so much stuff. I had to cram in so much stuff on WWE. Unbelievable, between the finances and all the different changes that are going on. The whole Paul Heyman situation, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about on phone calls in just a second. And just comparing the last 6 months of business and what it says.
which is quite confusing in and of itself. But anyway, we have that and information on how to get both publications up on the site. Before we get to the calls, I want to mention real quick that Randy Orton suffered a broken foot last night. We don't know how long he's going to be out of action. And Dave Bautista may have suffered a torn tricep. That's what he thought last night, and I think he's getting examined tomorrow. So evolution is, it's like what Brian said. It's the evolution of the business.
Yep.
I guess, is there anything else that we need to talk about? We'll start with Tom in Atlanta. Tom, what's going on?
Good evening. Was there a specific incident that caused Heyman to be demoted?
I don't think it was a specific. It's been brewing for a while. I think that the main thing is that he's hard to get a hold of, and sometimes when they call him, he calls back on his own time, and he misses deadlines when it comes to writing, and it was just very difficult. And here, I think that all would have been put up with if one of two things would happen. If SmackDown business was significantly better than Raw, they would have put up with it I have no question about it. And it was ratings were significantly better a month ago.
When football ended. Yeah.
Which is the reason that Raw started to catch up. And at the same time, SmackDown's got very tough competition. It's got much tougher competition than Raw on as far as the night goes. The other thing is that what I think did him in was that he was arguing over a lot of things, and that doesn't work there. And I mean, you understand, everyone in that company
knows their place.
They know their place, and there's a certain philosophy. And what the philosophy is it's whatever Vince's philosophy is on that day, because Vince's philosophy changes each week. So, but that's Titan philosophy. And Paul was not. I mean, he was brought up on Titan in a sense of being a fan from childhood, watching WWF as well. But he watched all wrestling. And he ran his own company, and he has his own ideas of what wrestling is. And it differs from Vince McMahon, and there are times, when they get along just great, but on occasions when he needed to fight, they don't want that. That's one of the reasons why, quite frankly, Brian or I could never last there. It just couldn't work. And he's better at playing politics, but he obviously wasn't good enough.
Do you think that's the end of all the great long matches that have happened on SmackDown the last few months or so? I guess that's the end of that, right?
I don't know, but
there were some long matches on Raw too.
I mean, but good matches.
No. I put it this way: I don't think it's the end of 15-minute matches. I do think it's the end of 25-minute matches. If that's what you're talking about. And you know what? There've been some 13, 15-minute matches on Raw. But God, I don't see. For some reason, I don't see anything in SmackDown going more than about 10 minutes now. But I could be wrong.
A few other quick questions. Off the record, I hear all these great interviews that go on. Is it available in any form in America?
No.
They have some of them up on the website.
They have a website that shows the.
I think the tsn.ca website. I think the Shawn Michaels was up last week, right after he did it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, great.
That may be. Is that the same interview? Yeah. That's right. They do have them up. Yeah.
I don't think they're up there for very long, so you kind of have to get up there quickly, but they're up there.
Yeah.
Final question. Pedro Morales, was he a draw when he was heavyweight champion, and what's he doing today?
He was a super draw in New York City. He was not a good draw in the cities, which is why they went back to Bruno Sammartino after a couple of years. But he was a better draw in New York than Bruno was.
Right.
But, Boston and Philadelphia and, the other major cities in WWF territory, he was not as good a draw, and that's why he only lasted 3 years as champion. And he's around. I'm not really sure what he's doing.
I've never seen him. I've been watching WWE for the last 20 years. I've never seen him return in any kind of fashion because Vince usually brings back everybody for something.
I think they just feel it's too far gone. And also, even though he was champion for 3 years, it was one of those things where, like him and Backlund, even though they were champions for a long time, I don't think they made the lasting impression that someone like Billy Graham did, even though he was only champion for 10 months.
Right.
Or like than Bruno did, or than Hogan did, or maybe that Piper did, who wasn't even ever champion.
Right.
So I don't know that. They don't bring anyone back from the 70s. It's like the 80s guys that they bring back now.
And finally, there's nothing on the Kurt Hennig autopsy report, is there?
I haven't heard anything new. In fact, I'm going to check on it tomorrow.
All right. Good night.
Okay.
Hey, do you think they're going to get rid of Paul on Tuesday?
I don't think so, but I wouldn't be shocked.
It's stupid to me that they would give that F5 away before WrestleMania.
Oh, I think that's just going to be everyone running in and beat down on Brock.
Yeah.
In the cage match. I think that's the only thing it can be.
But way to get that cage match over.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see what they do on Tuesday at in Bridgeport. Let's go to Jonathan in Savannah, Georgia. Jonathan.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not too much.
Well, the first caller took my question was about Paul, but a couple questions. My first one to go along with the Paul feeling is: do you think it's going to hurt them in the long term as far as ratings go? Like the ratings probably will stay the same, for the short term. Okay,
I'll tell you where it's going to hurt in the long term. It's going to hurt in the long term as far as building up new characters, because Paul is the best guy at building up new characters, and he's also the best guy at hiding weaknesses of characters. I think that, and I think a lot of the guys like Rey Mysterio and Jamie Noble, I think they're in a lot of trouble.
That was my other question I was going to ask you. Do you think the small guys are going to suffer? Because I know...
Absolutely.
Wasn't Ray on Velocity already this week?
Oh, that was a great match, though.
Yeah.
Ray and Shannon Moore, that was... Yeah, but...
He's always call me, though, and they'll go, oh, there was this great match on Velocity or on Heat. I guess there was like a Noble and somebody last week on Heat that everybody thought
Ray and...
Yeah, probably Ray and Noble then.
Yeah. That was good.
Nobody watches those shows.
No, I know.
But,
Speaking of a show nobody watches, did you see Confidential last night, Brian?
No.
That was my other question I wanted to ask you was about Confidential. Was about the fantasy matchup.
No, you know what? Okay. I was on the phone and I taped it, and my recorder ate the tape. So I've only seen the last 20 minutes of the show, but I know that they did a fantasy match. I saw the visual of it, and I could see they were doing a fantasy matchup of Roddy Piper and Chris Jericho, and I know that they had everybody. What they did? Everybody say that Roddy Piper would beat Chris Jericho or something?
It was a draw. It was even. Briscoe and Pritchard said that Piper would beat Jericho, and Coachman.
Oh yeah, like he's an authority.
Jericho would win.
Coachman and who?
Nowinski.
Oh, Nowinski, another authority. Two guys that have never watched wrestling for more than 3 years.
That's good. 4 people voting instead of 5 to break the tie.
But Pritchard Tom Pritchard's hero was Roddy Piper, so he can't vote against Roddy Piper. You know what was interesting watching the visual of that was I had forgotten how much steroids Roddy Piper was like in the 80s, because everybody was on him, and I always used to think of him as a small guy. But, God, that guy was all blown. He was like 235, 240 pounds. He was all blown up in those days.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I think if they voted a draw, then that's okay. If they'd all voted for Roddy Piper, it would have been the same speech I made when they did the Van Dam snooker thing.
I believe, nobody watches Confidential anyway. I mean, what's going to hurt if you just say Jericho could go over? I mean, that's me and 14
I think the only people that watch it would just laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did have a thing on Confidential where they asked all the women if they would pose in Playboy, and actually a surprising number of them said no.
What a shocker.
Yeah.
Oh, my other question for you was, I heard something about there was a possibility that they were thinking of turning Heat and Velocity possibly into an ECW brand.
That was discussed.
Do you think that's probably not going to happen?
It was discussed for about a minute a couple of weeks ago, and...
Into the ECW brand, you say?
Yeah, ECW. They have not even done a good job on these two brands. A third brand would be stupid. Now, that doesn't mean that when they buy it, that 3 months from now, they're going to look and go, we just spent $2 million, now we have to justify it, and they will try it and then blow it.
But then what it would be, would it be Velocity with the ECW name, and that's the only difference.
That's it, exactly.
Like the same ring, the same wrestlers, the same matches, the same horrible announcers.
Oh, that's worse than Thunder, that announcing. Oh, my God.
That's my other question I wanted to ask him about was, actually, when I watched Velocity last night, Josh Matthews, okay, he has no personality, but actual play-calling ability, like knowing the names of moves, as opposed to JR, who can't call moves half the time. The King, I don't even have to bother with that. But he actually knows the moves. Now, the Cat is beyond bad. I mean, he's...
the Cat is actually so bad...
It's funny.
That it's funny. Because you can't go 5 minutes without him saying something that you crack up about it just being totally ignorant.
Yeah, he said something about karate last night, talking about Bischoff. They brought Bischoff and his karate going to learn how to be a black belt and all that.
Yeah. Anyway, we got to go ahead to a commercial break, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right. You can call us at 1-800-878-PLAY. We have one line available in just a second, and we're back right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, and we're here for 2 hours every Sunday night, 8 to 10 Eastern, 5 to 7 Pacific time. We got one line open at 1-800-878-PLAY, so you can jump on that. We'll get to the phone calls in just a second. Brian, quick, did you by any chance see the Philadelphia Inquirer article on the UFC that was in today's paper?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, you got to see it. That's all I got to say.
Uh-oh.
No, you just got to see it. It's. Let's go to Alan in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Alan, what's going on?
Hi, how's it going? Dave, I wanted to ask you if Goldberg signed the contract yet.
I do not know the answer to that question. I know that they're very close if he has not already signed.
Who's he going to wrestle?
When? I don't even know when he's gonna. I don't even know when he's gonna wrestle. I mean, he'll wrestle. He'll probably end up wrestling just about everybody at some point.
Okay, but what's holding up the contract? Do you know?
Actually, the last I had heard was creative control, which is a pretty big hurdle. Now, I don't know if that's still a hurdle, but that was as of I think 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Supposed to be doing a program with Hogan. Is that the rumor?
God, I hope not. That would be. I mean, I think that would be a horrible idea.
Let me ask you.
Now Hogan would love to do it, and Hogan might manipulate it, but that's a horrible idea.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you one more question about the Paul Heyman demotion.
Yes.
Yeah, you were talking about it earlier on. Is Jim Ross an ally, or is he trying to, bury him too?
I don't think Jim Ross is even involved as either an ally or an enemy.
I don't think he cares.
I mean, it's not his. He's not really in. I mean, he's involved with the big process, but as far as
right,
like he's not in those meetings.
Right, but he's had some tension with Heyman. Is that correct?
Well, him and Heyman have known each other for probably 14, 15 years.
Right.
And anyone who has worked with Paul Heyman for 14, 15 years has had tension with him in the past and loved him in the past. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So
you don't know what their relationship is right now, right?
This minute, no, I don't know what it is right now. No, I don't.
Not just recently in the last couple of months.
They've had their good moments and their bad moments in the last couple of months.
Yeah, just like anybody else in the business, right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, very welcome. Let's go to Jeffrey in New York City. Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on? I have a quick question. Actually, two quick questions. Tim Sylvia, I was very impressed with him yesterday. How well do you think he would stack up against Antonio Nogueira and Bob Sapp?
It's an interesting one. Nogueira, he's a bad opponent for Nogueira because Nogueira can't take him down. Because Rico's a better wrestler than Nogueira. And standing up, he's got a lot of reach and he's got a lot of power, although Nogueira's a better stand-up fighter than Rico. So it'd be a tough fight for Nogueira. Now, Bob Sapp...
I don't know how long Tim Sylvia can go, though.
Conditioning-wise is a big thing. Yeah, you're right. Because that's certainly...
After 10 minutes, he may be taken down very easily.
That's right. We don't know because he's never been tested condition-wise. And in his last 9 fights, he's won, or 10 fights, he's won all of them by knockout pretty quick.
Yeah.
So now the other thing is Nogueira, if he plays his cards wrong, may go in there and get knocked out.
Yeah.
So Bob Sapp can take him.
I can't predict anything with Bob Sapp.
Bob Sapp can take him down. Bob Sapp can pummel him, and now you're talking about something different. We don't know what Sylvia can do on his back because he's probably never been there. So that's a tough one to call.
And we know Bob Sapp has that arm bar.
Yeah, but I'll bet you Sylvia's got one of those too. Training with the Militich camp. The one thing I would say as far as Bob Sapp goes is that I would expect that Sylvia training with the Militich camp is going to be in a lot better shape than Bob Sapp doing TV commercials every day.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's true.
That's my thoughts on that.
My other question is it's interesting how the last 10 years the MMA has changed so much. Do you think it has changed more in these past 10 years than it has changed in the history of martial arts? Because it seems like...
That's what Joe Rogan says, that like in the last 10 years it's changed more than the previous 500.
I would believe that.
Yeah, I would believe... Certainly the knowledge of what works in a real situation has changed so much, because I'll tell you, if I think back 10 years ago, what everybody thought about fighting, I mean, do you realize how wrong everyone was?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, that's the one thing you got to say for the Gracies is they opened a lot of eyes, and, I mean, it's gone full circle. I mean, now it's not submission fighting as much as wrestling and kickboxing. That are what's determining it, but still, all those wild karate kicks and things like that. I mean, boy, those things just didn't work at all.
Yeah. And I don't think that right now it's reached its peak. I think in about 10 years there are going to be fighters that would just lay waste to most everybody today.
Oh, no question.
And I think
they're going to be
a lot of that is because of
they're going to be bigger. And
there's going to be better knowledge about how to train.
Yeah, because right now, the knowledge of training, if we get Frank Shamrock on, I mean, the training that he does is like, he considers what, he did when he first started to be like the dark ages and stupid training. And they'll consider what they're doing now as stupid training. It'll be like, it'll be like if you watch those tapes of the NBA in the 40s and the 50s and then the 70s and then now. I think it's going to be the same way in fighting.
Yeah. And my last question is about Dr. Bill Miller. I was reading something in Lutez's book about how Dick the Bruiser was kind of trying to position himself as a better brawler than Dr. Bill Miller, even though many claim that Dr. Bill Miller was better. What's that all about? I was curious.
I don't know. Luthez hated Dick the Bruiser. Dick the Bruiser was a tough guy. I don't know. I would think Bill Miller was probably a tougher guy. Bill Miller was a big guy who was a good wrestler and a good football player, and pretty good with submissions because he was Carl Gotch's training partner. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how. Again, none of those guys were ever in a position where they ever used them in combat, so we don't really know how good they were. But the fact is, they knew more than anybody else in that era, so they probably could do it. Even know what I'm saying. But yeah, Bill. But as far as I know everybody respected Bill Miller as far as just being a big tough guy. Because he was like 6'5", 300, and a great athlete at that size, which very few guys in those days were.
Wow. All right. Thanks a lot. Good
okay.
night.
Very welcome. Let's go to Tony in Long Island. Tony, what's going on?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Doing really good.
That's great. Two things. Number one, at the top of the show, you were talking about the world.
Yes.
And I guess you both kind of, or Brian more so, couldn't believe that they signed a lease for such a long period of time. Just, I know it's kind of common practice, especially in that Times Square area, being that it's probably, the most desirable or one of the most desirable pieces of property or real estate in the world. If the WWF wouldn't go for that lease, there'd be 10 other companies looking to get that property. So really, it was either, the owner there had all the bargaining power.
Yeah.
So the WWF had to sign.
Yeah.
That's understandable, but still, if I were the WWE and they told me you got to sign for 20 years, that would be the end.
You know what? If I was a WWE and I wanted to do this, I wouldn't have done it in Times Square. I would have started somewhere where, like you know what I mean? The costs, the risks weren't nearly so high.
You could see if it were a success before.
Right, and then if it was really successful, then go to Times Square.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you guys, because I think the WWF figured that they were going to pick up all the foot traffic that walked past. But once you went in there, and I had been in there several times, to eat lunch or whatever, they didn't. It was really only the most ardent fans that would go to the restaurant, and for the prices that they wanted to charge, you were drawing from a clientele that wasn't prepared to pay those prices on a consistent basis. It was obvious.
What did you think, like the food and everything?
What's that?
What did you think of the food and everything?
You know what? The food for lunch wasn't bad. Actually, it was pretty decent. And, but one thing I noticed, and I've probably been to hundreds of restaurants in New York City, this was the first time I ever saw where they actually wrote in the amount that you were supposed to tip.
Really?
I'd never seen that. And I said, that's a clear indication that the people that were coming in there weren't either tipping or just didn't know what to, I don't know. But it was obvious that it wasn't the kind of clientele that was going to keep that place going.
I went there a couple of times when I was in New York, and it was always dead when I went, and I actually never ate there because the people who I was with were always like, it's like the ESPN thing was like right across the street, and everybody wanted to go there.
Sure.
And I liked the ESPN place. That was like a lot of fun. The WWE place just seemed to be, because it was right, like across the street or whatever it was, it just seemed to be, just not as good. The ESPN with all the big screens and all the levels and this and that, and the WWE place, except for that loop of, footage of Kurt Angle and all the music videos, there was really nothing to it.
Yeah, there was nothing to it, and it was always empty when you went in there for lunch. There might have been 2 or 3 tables. And, you go in there, you take somebody out to lunch, and you were going to go for $60, $70 for a regular lunch. And, the quality was okay, but it wasn't, they were in the wrong place. If they were on the outskirts of the city.
Hold on, $60 or $70 seat at New York, WWF New York.
Well, this was like just for lunch, 2 people for lunch. But what I'm saying, you guys are right.
Brian
the wrestling fan would have gone anywhere in the city, wherever they put that place. They put it in the wrong place.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I agree with you there.
And the other thing, the other point I have is this. I don't think I'm just so down on the product, and basically my thought is, what am I getting? I'm getting 2 watered-down products on Monday and Thursday, and I'd rather get all the guys. What I'm getting, instead of the top 20 guys Monday and Thursday, I'm getting the second-level guys. I'm getting 2 watered-down versions, and I don't want that. I want to see the top stars whenever I watch wrestling, and I don't want to see the second-tier guys. You know, when they become the first-tier guys.
Well, the idea was to do this was that they would become the first-tier guys because they would be positioned as such, but it hasn't really happened.
They haven't developed them.
Yeah, but I was very much pro brand extension when it first started, but I mean, the first month or so, I could see all the chinks in the armor, and you know, now I think it's like if you can't do it right, it's not worth doing. I mean, it's got to be done right, and they haven't done it right at all.
You know, I always admired Vince McMahon for some of the marketing things he did when I was younger. But the more you watched him do a lot of different things, you realize that he's been a failure, I think, a lot more than he's been a success.
But
one of the things, too, about Vince is he's very, very stubborn. And if he'd failed 100 times and once something was obviously a failure, he just moved on to something else, that'd be one thing. But he just rides, it's just like we always said with Hogan, just ride the horse till it's dead or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that restaurant should have not lasted through the planning stages, but they dragged it out for God knows how many years.
Yeah.
And at least he killed the XFL early.
Yeah, but that wasn't his doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it.
I mean, you realize that if, NBC was going to be out no matter what, but UPN could have easily said yes,
mm-hmm.
and he would have gone for that second season.
Yeah.
And you know, like, wrestling's not making enough money to cover that. I mean, he would actually be in really bad shape now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because XFL would lose more than $100 million this year, and NBC wouldn't be carrying half of that loss. And because this year would be less successful than the year before, because NBC would have already dropped it.
Yeah.
Do you guys think, in retrospect, that going public was a mistake?
I don't think that that's really an issue, because I think that the mistake made, he was going to make him whether it was public or private.
You don't think he spread himself too thin getting into the whole public arena?
He spread himself too thin by starting the XFL. He was going to do that whether he was public or private.
He would have had the money to do it if he was...
Oh, yeah. He wanted to show the Canadian Football League, and yeah, definitely.
Okay, guys, take care.
Okay, thanks very much for your call, Tony. We will be back with more right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. With Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. I want to get back to the call. Second hour, by the way, we will be joined by Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan, just back from Japan on that big show at Budokan Hall where Mitsuharu Misawa and Ken Kobashi wrestled for maybe the last time. And that actually, I haven't much about it, but that is one of the greatest rivalries in the history of this industry.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's go to Dan in Chicago. What's going on, Dan?
What's going on, Dave? How you doing, buddy?
Doing really good.
By the way, I liked your selection of music just now.
Oh, well, it wasn't mine.
Okay, well, I'm a big fan, so
it was mine.
Yeah.
So anyway, what do you think of Goldberg Lesnar at SummerSlam?
That's not the worst idea in the world. If it's built up correctly, I think that's a good idea.
Because everybody from at work is mentioning that to me. I'm like, yeah,
I mean, the first 6 months that Lesnar was being put over, everybody was chanting Goldberg at him. So,
right.
I mean, there's an underlying thing that people want to see that match. It's just a question of promoting it correctly. But yeah, I like that idea.
Right.
Of course,
what do you think?
Goldberg would have to make it to the summer without being buried.
That's right.
Goldberg?
Yeah, that means that Goldberg would have to go all summer long without being buried. Well, I think that's a good idea too.
Yeah. Also, too, I heard an ugly rumor that they're going to split up the pay-per-views. Is there any truth to that?
That ugly rumor is true, starting in June.
And what's the price going to be, and how are they going to do it?
As best I know, it's going to be $34.95, and they're going to do a Raw 1 month, SmackDown 1 month, but then SummerSlam and SummerSlam and Survivor Series this year will be dual brands, which to me, I think psychologically makes it even worse because. Don't you think that people will just go, okay, I'm just going to wait to spend my $34.95 on the real pay-per-views, which are Survivor Series and SummerSlam, rather than these rinky-dink ones? Whereas now, if nothing else, like the so-called big shows, you still got the same talent on every show, and you get great matches. Maybe not in the last one, there wasn't the off-the-charts match, but routinely on every WWE pay-per-view, there's the Kurt Angle and the Chris Benoit match, and or Eddie Guerrero match, and they're usually pretty darn good. Anything else, Dan? Real quick, because we got to hit the break.
Well, can I be on hold and wait, or do you want me to?
Okay, hold on.
I think.
Okay, we'll go through the commercial break. Okay, we'll be back. Also, second hour, we're going to have Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan. We're going to talk about Japanese wrestling. We'll talk about independent wrestling in the U.S. and as well as WWE, taking your phone calls. Got some UFC questions, WrestleMania questions as well. We'll see you right after the break. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of the Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on.
Okay, welcome to the second hour here on Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. We've got Donovan Morgan already on the line. We're trying to get a hold of Mike Modest as well. Donovan has just gotten back from Japan, probably, I don't know. How many hours have you been back?
I've been back about 4 hours.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
How was the trip?
It was great. You know what? This tour was really just legendary, especially with that match, Kobashi and Misawa at the Budokan.
Yeah. Tell us about that match. I mean, I've heard that it was just an incredible match.
It was unbelievable, and I think Noah is growing so much now. That match took our company to a whole new level.
Really? Well, explain what was different about that match than since a lot of the other good matches that you've had. Because whenever you have a Budokan, the main event usually is a really strong match.
Exactly. I just think since Misawa and Kobashi had met so many other times, especially in All Japan, even in the magazines they showed pictures from each time that they had met, and so everyone expected it to be a really good match, but it was more than that. It was a great match. It was back and forth pretty much, the whole match, and they even did, Misawa gave Kobashi a chicken wing suplex off of the stage to the floor, and
that sounds sick.
The place, you couldn't hear in the place, and the Budokan, the sound, it's so loud. It's like I was telling Mike when I was at the Budokan when Kobashi returned and he wrestled, he was in that tag match with Nagata and Akiyama. That match was, when he came back and made his return, it was so loud in there, tears would come to your eyes because you couldn't even think. I mean, they love him so much. And I think in most of Misawa and Kobashi's fights, Misawa won, and I know Kobashi's only won, I don't know, 3?
He's won a couple of tournament ones, but I think he had never won a big title type of singles match from him ever.
Right. So that was a big thing, and I think Kobashi is in just probably the best shape of his life now, and it was just awesome. I mean, you have to see it, you have to watch it to really, see what I'm saying, but everyone there was like, oh my God, that match was, it took the company to a whole new level.
We're going to have to head to a break right now. We're going to be back with more with Donovan Morgan. We'll talk about the tour of Noah as well as our Ring of Honor and some other independent stuff in the States. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, and we had some tricky engineering work trying to get 3 guests, basically. Well, Brian and both Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan on. And is everybody here?
I'm here, Dave. We're here.
All right. Brian, are you here?
I'm here.
All right. Everything's working great.
So good so far.
All right. Mike, real quick, we talked to Donovan before you got on the air about the match last, I guess it's actually yesterday our time. And you just got in from it a couple hours ago. What were your thoughts on the final show?
The show was incredible. Donovan and I, we were in the second match with Taue, teaming with Taue, and it was a good match. It was a good, solid match. But the main event that night, Misawa and Kobashi, was historic. I mean, it was really an honor to be there, and those guys wrestled their asses off. It was an incredible, incredible match.
What is your thoughts as far as where the company is going, and the style of wrestling over there. And for those who have actually probably never seen a tape of Noah wrestling or even the old All Japan tapes, how would you describe the differences between that wrestling and maybe different styles of wrestling in the United States?
Well, the Noah wrestling product is pretty much sport. There's not a lot of talking on the microphone, interviews, that sort of thing. They let wrestling sell the show pretty much. We've been involved with some things recently that are very uncharacteristic of like All Japan. With all the gaijin talent being there, Scorpio, myself, Donovan, Bison, and then Harley Race is bringing in guys like Superstar Steve, Bull Schmidt. So with that strong element, now we've been adding a little bit of our own U.S. flavor to the product, but it's still, for the most part, it's a very sport-oriented product.
What is the difference in your mind as far as your company and how it all fits in with the 30 or so different companies that are running in the Tokyo area and all over Japan?
Well, it's amazing because all of the companies really do have their own flavor. Osaka Pro is very different from Michinoku Pro, although they do interchange a lot of talent. And that's one of the things that surprised me most about Japan is, even the last show there, some 01 guys showed up, Tom Howard, Predator, and also
Steve
Carino from the NWA. So they showed up, and that surprised me because 01 is working so closely with All Japan right now, and Noah basically did split from All Japan, and there's no love lost between those two promotions. So, but everybody seems to work together a lot. Hashimoto has worked for Noah, as well as a lot of 01 guys off and on. And
if you watch though the difference between like a New Japan television show and the Noah television show, and I'm not just saying this because we work for Noah, but there is a real distinct difference, and it's more so noticeable now really than I've ever seen it. I think our guys, and I think just the TV show I think it's more enjoyable. I think it's more entertaining.
Well, it's more wrestling, and they're more gimmickry right now.
Exactly.
And New Japan is also toying around a lot with the shoot fighters, with the pro wrestlers and the boxers and so on and so forth. And to me, that's never been a product that really, in my mind, has ever been really worth paying attention to. It just never seems, the styles conflict so much that it's never good television. But New Japan's doing a lot of that right now, whereas Noah, the closest thing I can describe Noah to would be the old NWA. That would be about the closest thing I could come up with.
Now, did either of you guys, by any chance, see or hear about the junior heavyweight tournament that they had like a week before your tour started?
Yeah, the tag tournament?
Yeah.
Yeah, we heard about it.
Because I just watched a tape of that a couple of days ago, and those shows may have been the best shows I've seen not just all year. It's early in the year, but in a long time. There was, from your company, they had Kenta and Kotaro Suzuki.
Right.
And they worked with some guys like Ultimo Dragon and Yoshino and. They had some guys from 01, and actually the best match was against two guys from GDT. That kind of resembled the Hardy Boys. I mean, it was one of the most incredible matches I've seen.
Really?
Yeah, with the solid wrestling and a long match, and the people were just you know how it goes over there when you get a good match, then the people really get into it.
Mhm. Wrestling fan, they're a wrestling fan, and they're going to appreciate the athleticism really with anything that they see. I didn't see the tournament, but from what I understand, Ultimo Dragon's promotion ended up walking away with it. Correct?
Him and his partner ended up winning the tournament.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it, so I wasn't even aware that ladders and that type of thing was involved. But that's the thing we really liked about Noah is. One of the whole ideas with Noah breaking away from All Japan was freedom and belief in different styles and kind of intermixing things. And, you know, Misawa, being a former cruiserweight himself, he really respects that style and really respects the flying and all of that. So it's you know, it's a great company to work for in that respect.
It's kind of ironic now, too, because All Japan's doing the Wrestle One, or they were doing the Wrestle One.
Yeah, yeah. That was. Have you guys seen the Wrestle One?
We could barely stomach it.
Yeah, it was.
Did you see it, Dave?
I saw both of them. The first show really wasn't that bad, but the second show was ungodly bad, I thought.
The second show was the one with Chronic and Muda and Goldberg, correct?
Yes, that show was ungodly bad.
Yeah, the Bubba Sepp match that was just god awful.
And that's the thing. And that's, you know, I watch a show like that and I go, keep having those shows, guys, because, man, that compared to our Budokan show yesterday, there's no comparison.
What now? As far as why don't you? I don't know how familiar you are with it, but you probably are more than anyone else that's listening. The training of their young guys, just like a guy like, say, you know, Kotaro Suzuki, who's just come along, or Kenta, who's come along great, I think. You know, and they've been in the business only a couple of years. How do they do that? How does that compare with how you guys train, or what have you picked up as far as, because you guys are, you know, doing your wrestling
I'll
school?
tell you, Dave, we're probably one of the toughest, you know, schools in the States right now, and it's not so much because we beat the crap out of the guys. It's just, you know, we run them through the ringer. You know, we have them bumping a lot in the ring and have them doing a lot of amateur and calisthenics and stuff like that before they even get a chance to step into the ring. But ours is nothing compared to what the guys go through in Japan. I mean, it's amazingly brutal.
And the thing is, with a guy like Kenta, you know, with most of the people that come to our school, they've got jobs on the side. You know, they come to class 3-4 days a week at best. And a guy like Kenta, when he comes to the dojo, that's his life. That then becomes his life, and he lives with Kobashi, and Kobashi, you know, he's Kobashi's young boy pretty much. And he's, I mean, imagine you break into the business and you've got the tutelage of Kobashi, you know. I mean,
behind you.
That's why you're going to be so good in only 2 years, you know, because they practice 6 days a week, 5 hours a day at the dojo, and that's why everyone comes along so fast.
Now, physically, okay, I mean, the one thing about that style is, and I mean, we're seeing this in the United States with WWE style as well, the injury rate has really gotten out of control. And I mean, with Misawa and Kobashi, I mean, I have seen, you know, wrestlers of their age in the old days, you know, in the 70s and stuff like that, 35, 40, that, you know, were not, I mean, these guys are very banged up, even though they can still go when they need to go, and Kobashi is one of the best I've ever seen, and as Misawa, you know, I mean, it's a very physically hard style that, you know, as compared to the styles, a lot of other styles, and you know, with WWE, with guys going down, you know, what physically, as far as the injuries and everything like that, how come they have, what injuries do you think are worse or better as far as in a Japanese style and as far as an American style on your body? Like, where is it harder and easier?
You see a lot of injuries in Japan, you know, in the knees. I mean, a lot more. I mean, wouldn't you say, Mike?
Yeah, well, you know, they're one of the things that they do a lot in the training is their young boys do squats every day, just standing squats, and they work them up to 1,000 squats a day, and that's, you know, sometimes they'll have them before a match. They'll say, you know, okay, hit your squats, 1,000 squats, and then you go out and wrestle a match. And I mean, that's, you know, I can't even tell you how damaging that is to your knees. So yeah, you see a lot of knee injuries, but also, you know, I think one of the differences though too is in Japan, you know, there's a lot of injuries. Muhammad Yone just recently, you know, hurt his knee. You know, doing a standing boot off of the second rope and hyperextended his knee, and he's been out, how long, Donovan? Six months?
6, 7 months.
6, 7 months now, and he's got another couple of months to go. But the thing is you can recover from a knee injury, you know, whereas I think a lot of times in the States you see some pretty severe injuries and injuries that are, I think,
career enders.
Yeah, career enders because of, maybe, the high risk stunts and things like that they're pulling off of, so you see a lot more serious injuries.
Okay, we're going to go ahead to a break. We're going to be back with Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to the Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. If you're looking for information on either of those publications, go to www.wrestlingobserver.com, and there's info. If you don't know about Japanese wrestling, both publications, I'll get you up to date on that stuff pretty quick. It's pretty fascinating. I'll tell you, on Saturday night, when you guys had your big show at Budokan, there were two other big shows in the Tokyo area because the WJ promotion was doing its debut show, and K1 was doing its first show of the year. Do you guys feel, at your level, did they give you any pressure, like, we've got to have the best show of the three, or is it just like we're going to do our show and they can do whatever they want?
You know what? The thing is, the whole company, everybody works so hard, Dave, that it's not like anybody even has to tell anybody, hey, kick ass out there.
It goes unsaid.
It's unspoken. Everybody, we go out there, we give it 110% every single night. The beginning of the last tour, I sprained my ankle a second match in, and a sprain can be pretty bad. It was a bad one, and so we taped it up in a soft cast, and I worked every night. That's just the way you do it back, in Japan, and I know a lot of the guys out here in the States, with WWE in particular, hey, they work. If you're hurt, you work. And Misawa worked in a tour one time with a shoulder strap, big brace on his shoulder.
And that's really too, the difference. Even with our dojo, with Pro Wrestling Iron, a lot of people think, oh well, they're just strictly Japanese. They're a Japanese training facility, and that's it. And that nothing could be further from the truth because, our main affiliation is, yes, with Pro Wrestling Noah, but also, there's a lot of other companies right now that we're talking to, like NWA TNA, and, I had a conversation with Tom Pritchard before I left on the last tour, and so, there's a lot of interest in our company now, what we're doing, and so for those people that think, well, it's just Japanese style, no, they're totally wrong. In fact, we've got a good stable of girls coming in now. We've got a couple girls, and things are looking good there. We got a lot more managers, a lot more referees now that we're training. And since we opened up our new 4,000 square foot facility last month, phones haven't stopped ringing, right, Mike?
Yeah, we've been pretty busy. And, Donovan, it really is. A lot of people, they say Japanese style or Lucha Libre style or U.S. style. There are subtle differences in the style, but, the fact of the matter is you're getting in there and you're bumping and thumping every night, whether you work for WWE,
exactly.
Noah, New Japan, doesn't matter. The wrestlers all have to be trained along the same lines, and then when you go to different companies, you work different styles. That's really the only difference, The training is all pretty much the same. A body slam is a body slam, whether you throw it here in the United States or you throw it in Japan. It's taught the same way, and it feels the same.
Why don't you guys tell them really quick about the different things, as far as the school and as far as your tapes and as far as any house shows you've got coming up.
First of all, Dave, have you gotten a copy of that tape yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, you will soon.
Yeah, I'll send it tomorrow.
Okay, great, awesome.
Since we were in Japan, sometimes stuff lags, but on that I will get it to you tomorrow. But the tape is out, the August 2nd show, and actually we just turned it out, and it is such an awesome tape. It's not one of those typical indie tapes that's filmed on a handheld and stuck in a box and shipped to you for $20. We actually with our philosophy was when we started the schools, everything we did, we wanted to do the best we could for the amount of money that we had and the amount of money we were working with. And we were really able to pull off an incredible feat with this tape because
we put a lot of work into the production and stuff, and had some effects done down in Los Angeles for the tape.
So it looks really good. And the thing too is it's $15 for VHS tape. If you want it on DVD, it's $20, and you can get it by going to the website at ProWrestlingIron.com.
Okay, I want to ask you something about the type of schedule you work, because generally speaking, with Noah, you're working what's like 2 or 3 week tours where you're working 5-6 nights a week generally.
Yeah,
on average.
And then you get a couple of weeks off, and then you go back. How physically on you? How does that compare? And maybe do you find that better or worse than say a WWE schedule where let's say you would work 4 days a week, but there's no weeks off, until like Christmas, you get 2 weeks off a year or so.
I actually think even though, my body does take a beating, my shoulder's killing me right now. It's bothering me for the last 3 tours. The body takes a beating and everything, but I think the WWE guys actually have it a little rougher as far as the travel. When we go to Japan, we're being chartered around in a bus, and brought to the hotels and everything, whereas the WWE guys, a lot of them are, they got to get their own rent-a-cars. They got to find their way to their own building. Whereas we got a bus driver taking us and we're sleeping on the way to the building. So in a lot of ways, we have it a lot easier in that respect. And then when I'm home, I have a good quality time home, whereas they only have a couple of days and then it's really back on the road. Even if they're only working four nights a week, well, they're still, travel days.
Yeah, well, they got to fly home and fly back.
Exactly. So they're not getting that quality time with their family. Whereas, I come home and if me and my wife want to take off and go to Las Vegas for a weekend, we can do that. So I'd much rather be working the schedule I'm working now.
Now, as far as injuries go, because I've noticed, with Edge got hurt his neck, and he's having surgery on March the 10th, and he's going to be out for a year, and it's actually caused a lot of talk because it's like the 7th guy to have neck surgery in maybe the last year, 2 years, I'd say, in WWE, and everyone, everyone, I'm sure everyone in Noah, everyone in WWE, you're always hurt. I mean, it's unavoidable to not be hurt, but a lot of people are going like, maybe that schedule of the week or 2 off here, here and there, maybe that, I don't know if that protects you more, or maybe you're just going to be hurt. There's no avoiding it no matter how you do it.
There really is no avoiding injury, but at the same time, if your body's beat down, you're definitely more prone to injury. And with the guys that they have so many guys under contract right now, and tons of guys that they're not even using. They could really afford probably to switch some guys to 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, that sort of thing.
What's your thoughts as far as you brought up NWA TNA? I mean, how have you guys considered going there in your weeks in between, or?
Yeah, actually, we're talking to them right now about it, and we're hoping to come out to NWA TNA sometime in May.
Oh, okay.
Vader's there full time, right?
What's that?
Vader's there full time.
I don't know what Vader's worked out with them. I wouldn't even want to comment on it because I have no idea.
What about Donovan? Of course, you're going back to Ring of Honor, I guess. What's your do you have a schedule on that or anything?
Yeah, I'm going back April 26th.
Okay, Mike, what happened with you and them?
Oh, that was a disaster. Dave, I'll give you the edited version. The deal was we went out there. They had myself, Omori, and Donovan sharing a one-bedroom hotel room, or one-bed hotel room. No roll-away or anything like that. Kind of irritated me, but that wasn't the thing that really pissed me off. What the real problem was during the show, Gabe came up. He asked me, hey, do you want to work this date? I was like, I don't have my organizer on me. I'm getting ready to go out and wrestle. Don't have a pen and paper. Please email me so that as soon as I get home, I can check my schedule and make sure that I'm not leaving for Noah, within that week. Because the last couple of days before I leave, I've got a lot of, loose ends to tie up around the house and get my wife situated and get ready to take off, make sure all the bills are paid, et cetera, et cetera. So Gabe didn't email me. he calls me, I'd say 2 weeks before the event. I can't even remember. And like, hey, we want you to work this date. And I just told him, I said, oh, sorry, I'm going back to NOAA. It was like 2 days before I went back to NOAA. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. He got lippy with me on the phone, pissed me off, and that's about it.
All right, we're going to go ahead to a break. We're going to start taking some phone calls. You can call up for Donovan and Mike at 1-800-878-PLAY. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly and our special guests this week, Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan of Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan, Pro Wrestling Iron in the United States. They run a school in Northern California, which you can get info on at ProWrestlingIron.com. And some independents. Donovan Morgan working for Ring of Honor as tag team champion with Chris Daniels and is it Xavier? Is that how it's...
I don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
I see that they're defending the tag titles, so that's fine by me. I'll go there on the 26th and get paid and come home. So
okay,
whatever they want to do.
Now with you guys, of course, most people know that you started with Roland Alexander in All Pro Wrestling and ended up breaking away from him a little over a year ago, and actually a year and a half ago, I guess now. But the situation with Brian Ong got a lot of media publicity in this area in the last couple of months. And looking back on that whole situation, do you guys have any thoughts on that? On how it's been covered, or?
Well, I saw I heard about the Bay Area scams thing that I guess KPIX did, but from what I understand, it wasn't really well done, and it had a lot of misinformation and everything. The Brian Ong thing, it was a terrible tragedy, and at the time I wasn't even training people at APW. Donovan was heading that up, and Vinny Massaro was his assistant. And but when I found out what had happened, and I found out that Dilip was involved, and I found out Brian, he wasn't a strong bumper and everything. I thought to myself, I probably wouldn't have had Brian in the ring with Dilip. But, everybody was like on this witch hunt, and wrestling's a tough sport, man, and people land on their head and people get hurt. And it's no different than high school football. How many times have you heard about a high school football, player getting killed with a head injury?
Yeah.
It has, and it's an unfortunate thing, but hey, it happens in the real world. People, good God, I hear about people dying skiing, and it's just horrifying. I'll never go skiing, not a day in my life. It's a real risk to the sport, and I don't wish any bad on APW, and I don't wish that certainly anybody tries to make an example out of them, because they're just a school, and Brian knew the risks that were involved.
Donovan, do you have anything on that?
Basically, it's a rough sport, and even where everyone was concerned with the size difference. I mean, good Lord, I've watched Dilip wrestle in New Japan many occasions with guys his size, and it's one of those things that.
Well, you can look at Rey Mysterio wrestling Kevin Nash.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's the one thing on that and that aspect, and it's funny because I was called on a lot of those stories, and the one that I always wanted to make was they were talking about one guy twice the size of the other guy in training, and I'm going like, that's not that unusual, because the small guy is eventually going to come across in a professional wrestling match, if he's going to make it. He's going to come across, maybe not someone the size of Dilip, because there aren't too many, but he's going to come across somebody close to that size at some point in his career. And Dilip will certainly be wrestling guys Brian Ong's size if he's going to have a long career in this business. And, like you said, like Rey Mysterio and Kevin Nash or whatever, the idea of those two guys training together, was not a scandalous thing. And I would tell people that, but and I don't know why. It seemed like it never went through anyone's head, because then I would read the newspaper story going like, what was this guy doing training with a guy twice his size? And it's like, because everyone's got to train with everyone because there's all shapes and sizes in wrestling.
Yeah, it's just people don't understand pro wrestling, and especially the media. The media
has never liked pro wrestling, and any chance they get to give it another black eye, they gladly take the opportunity.
So I mean, it's just the same thing would happen if Andre the Giant, hurt Bushwhacker Luke, and you would have the media, running around screaming, "Oh, look at the size difference!"
Actually, I think you'd have the media running, "Oh my God, look at Andre's back from the dead."
Let's go to James in Seattle. James, what's going on?
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good.
Since you brought up, since you guys were bringing up the idea of how they work hurt in Japan, I know that there's some extreme examples, like the legendary one where Kawada broke his arm against Misawa and kept going for like another 20 minutes. Is that something that's just kind of expected, or do people really recognize that, and do they give you respect for something that extreme?
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, James, but I think what you were basically talking about was just the injuries. You said something about the Kawada broken arm.
Yeah, well, Kawada wrestled Misawa and he broke his arm in that Triple Crown match.
Yeah, it's just the guys over there, they just don't quit. You go out there and you get hurt during your match, you just keep going.
But Mike, knowing the mentality, if you were over there and you were in, let's say, a 15-minute match, and 4 minutes in you broke your arm, you would continue the match. I don't even think that you would even consider not continuing the match, would you? Or unless
I would do the best I could to
Yeah.
try to continue the match.
Yeah.
That's just our job. When Chris Daniels, but I mean, again, I'll go back to the States. I don't want to make it seem like we're selling the States short, because Chris Daniels hit that moonsault off the top during our match with WCW and landed straight on his head, and Chris continued. It's a special breed that actually become pro wrestlers. There's a lot of people that want to train and think it's a great idea, but it's a special breed that actually succeed and just don't stop until they make their goals. And those are the guys that, when they get hurt in the ring, try to continue. Misawa busted his face open on the rail. What, Donovan, 4 or 5 minutes into that match?
Yeah, about 4 minutes. Yeah.
About 4 minutes into the match, he went for a clothesline, from the apron. Kobashi moved, and Misawa just smashed his face right on the rail, busted his lower lip open.
And didn't Kobashi break his orbital bone?
I have no idea. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Wouldn't surprise me if he broke more than that.
Yeah, the amount of abuse they took during that match was amazing.
I'm surprised, like with all the head dropping, that you don't see more neck injuries.
Yeah, well, you
probably do. You just don't hear about them.
Yeah,
Do you think that
look, Asako from No Fear. That's what eventually put him out, was a neck injury. There was some type of nerve damage in his spine, and he lost feeling in one of his arms. And
that's the WWF injury that we're hearing a lot about.
Yeah.
Do you think that's just they train harder and they know to expect that? Like something like, I think it was in the match where Kawada broke his arm, where Misawa went for the Rana reversal out of a power bomb, and then Kawada just dropped him on his head. Do you think they're?
Well, that was a spot. I think. I don't think that was a
right,
mistake.
But, I mean, something like that they would never get away with doing in America. Do you think that?
They might.
They probably would. The thing is, I really believe that if you keep the wrestling in the ring, I've seen a lot of suplexes and stuff, but if you keep it in the ring, not that it's a trampoline, you're going to minimize any real damage that's going to be done. It's when you bring in the ladders and now you're jumping from that extra height, or you're jumping from the ring to the floor off the top or something, that's when the real serious risk comes into play as far as my mind is concerned.
And my other question about the injury thing, do the fans expect you to work through an injury, or do they give you a lot of respect if they saw somebody take an orbital bone fracture in a match? Would they give extra applause for that, or would they
it's funny. Funny you mention that, because that's one of the big differences between the Japanese wrestling fans and the U.S. wrestling fans. the differences between the Japanese wrestling fans and the U.S. wrestling fans. The Japanese wrestling fans go off of heart. If you showed heart during a fight, if you were up, as long as it was a good fight, if you had heart. And so that's what they're going to appreciate. It's not that the fans are going to expect you to, you know, if you break your arm 4 minutes into the match, you know, if all you can do is a minute extra, they're going to appreciate that extra heart that you had.
And the thing, too, is Japanese fans realize that they're the one that bought the frickin' ticket to sit and watch you. You know, American fans don't realize that.
The American fans want to be the stars.
Yeah, exactly. They bought the ticket, but they want to be the stars, and they're not. And so, you know, that's the difference, and that's why, you know, man, I wish everyone were like Japanese wrestling fans.
Okay, but you know, don't you think some of that also is in the style you give them? Because I'll tell you what, the last time I went to one of your shows, when you gave them a serious match, the fans reacted in a serious manner, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
When you give them something that's not serious, I think that maybe they'll take control. Because I didn't see that element, the element of wrestling fan that sometimes I hate to see in the United States. I didn't see that at your show. And this is with, you know, like the guys in the earlier matches that aren't as experienced, but they were trying to do a serious style. And the fans, as the matches were going on, were appreciating them for their heart and how hard they were working.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point, Dave. The thing is, if you set up a match and you base all of the importance off of the match on the entertainment that happens all before, all the promos and the angles and all that stuff, if you base the importance on the match based off of the angle, and the angle's ridiculous, the match will not be taken seriously. I don't care how hard the guys work. It just won't be that quality or that caliber of a match.
And that's another thing, too, if I can interject, that we were
Sure,
so shocked on the August 2nd show because the fans really reacted in a Japanese way, and there were a lot of people there that knew who Misawa was and knew who Ogawa was.
I'll tell you, Dave, you know, Misawa actually accused me and Donovan of putting plants in the crowd to start the Misawa.
And you know, the funny thing is that you guys kept that thing a secret.
Yeah. We didn't even let it out because we weren't 100% sure that Misawa and Ogawa were going to be able to be there. So we didn't want to advertise. Plus, I just have this theory in my head that if people never know who's going to be at our shows, maybe they'll come.
I don't like that theory.
Who knows?
Because it gets out of control too.
Yeah. It was one of our first shows. It was actually our second show, and we just wanted to make sure if we were going to say something that big, that it was actually going to happen. And we'd rather take the chance of not saying it and then having it be a surprise than saying it and then, you know, like other promoters do and have it fall through miserably.
Yeah.
And that would have really been the death of us.
James, real quick, anything else you want to add?
No, thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to have to look out for this tape.
Okay, we'll be back. We've got a couple minutes left with Mike and Donovan right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. We're here for 2 hours every Sunday night, 8 to 10 Eastern, 5 to 7 Pacific Time on the Sports Byline Radio Network. We've got Michael Modest and Donovan Morgan.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
Can I...
Go ahead.
I know you asked earlier about our shows and our dates coming up.
Yes.
Can I swing those in real quick?
Go ahead, yes.
Actually starting to run quite a few shows now and actually have kind of like a tour-like schedule starting in May. May 2nd, we'll be at the Newark Pavilion, and May 30th in Cloverdale, California. May 31st, we're going to be running a fairgrounds. That'll be announced on the internet this week. June 6th is going to be in Palo Alto, and June 7th will be in Angels Camp. If you're interested in obtaining tickets, you can call the Pro Wrestling Iron office at 510-670-0504. And even if you have questions about the training or whatnot, give that number a call or visit the website, ProWrestlingIron.com.
Now, if you guys, I know that you must have thought of it, and I know, Mike, I know you have because we've discussed it in this past, the idea of some sort of a way to get NOAA television on in the States.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would do really well, especially here in the San Francisco Bay Area. With WWE only coming to the Bay Area every so often, hit and miss. I think that Noah would do very well here.
Anything going on that, or is this kind of like an idea that you have?
It's an idea I have, but we are actually talking to a TV station right now.
Oh, really?
We just don't like to say too much
until we actually accomplish something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So until I've got something real solid to spout off about, we like to keep it to ourselves pretty much.
I want to thank both you guys for doing the show just so soon after getting back. Now, when do you guys go back?
We go back
the 19th. We leave.
Yeah. So it starts March 21st, runs through April 14th.
Okay, and that includes the big show on April the 13th.
Yes.
Do you have any ideas anything like that's going on that show, or like is the 01 or just you guys, or do you even know?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
To be honest, I haven't heard anything, and I'm sure something will pop up this next week.
I'm hoping for a title shot at Kanemaru real soon here, so.
Okay.
That's what I'm kind of hoping for.
All right. I want to thank both you guys for joining in. And, of course, thanks, Brian, for being here. And we'll see everybody next Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer live on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network.